Welcome to the review of the OnePlus 9 Pro.
In the darkest hour, I wanna comfort you. I know you've been alone. Oh, where do you go?
So, I usually start off my videos talking about the physical look and feel of whatever device it is that I'm reviewing. And to start off, I'm going to say that it's a very good looking phone in my opinion. The design it's got its own design and it looks very sleek, very clean. Everything about it looks premium as well. It also feels premium when you hold it in the hand. It feels very sleek. All the curves are in the right places. And it has its own kind of individual look. And it doesn't overdo it and it doesn't underdo it. So it's a nice balance. It's a good looking phone, especially with the matte finish. That for me makes all the difference. But something about a matte finish is it makes the phone very, very slippery. Like, this is the first time, well, not the first time, but with matte phones it became noticeable for me that phones are actually more slippery and you're more likely to drop it because of that matte finish. So yeah, just something to throw out there. But just a quick kind of comment, and this isn't a con or anything, but just something I kind of noticed is I feel like the design of this phone was kind of inspired from the iPhone. It takes inspiration from the design of the back of the iPhone. You got that logo centered, like Apple recently centered the Apple logo on their iPhones in the iPhone 11 Pro. And then for the camera bump, they have a very similar design, not in terms of the shape, but in the way that the lenses are separated from the actual camera bump, instead of being one big black panel. So it does have a little bit of a resemblance in that sense, but other than that, it's an entirely unique design. But this isn't me complaining. I actually really like it. So just some thoughts there, just something I kind of noticed. Now, in terms of the green color, was the lack of fingerprints on the back of the phone. Like, you don't see the fingerprints smudged all over the back with this green color, especially because it's matte, but also the green, I imagine, does make a difference. But yeah, just something to say there. Like, it's really hard to see those fingerprints, and they're very minor if you look at it in the right light. But yeah, it just ends up adding to the whole premiumness and making it look really clean. Now, in terms of the rest of the physical build, you have that alert slider right above the power button. This is a signature OnePlus feature, and I've always told you that I love it. And it's a bit different than what Apple do. Apple have silent and ring, and then you can customize the silent to be vibrate or whatever. Here you have all three modes, very quickly accessible: ring, vibrate, and silent, and very easy to change from. So this is it done right, and I love that they're keeping it, and I hope they do continue to do that. Now, looking at the front of the phone, of course, you have a display, and this is a 6.7-inch AMOLED 1440p 120Hz display, which goes up to 1300 nits in brightness, which is good. In my experience, the brightness has actually been really good, especially when I'm outside. I haven't had any problems seeing the screen. It's not quite at Samsung's level though, so I gotta say that. But in terms of the rest of the display, like I said, it's 1440p. In other words, it's 3K, so it's great when you're watching content. Other than that, not that noticeable, but if you're watching a lot of videos on there, then it will be highly appreciated, I imagine. And then, like I said, it's 120 Hz, meaning the screen refreshes 120 times per second, so it ends up looking very smooth when you're doing things like scrolling through and that kind of thing. And with the 120 Hz, they announced something called LTPO technology, which basically means that they have an adaptive display. So the display can change from 1 Hz all the way up to 120 Hz based on what the content is that you're viewing on your screen. So if you're on a static image, something like that, it will go all the way down to 1 Hz and save you some battery. And when you're scrolling through some stuff, it'll jump it up all the way up to 120 Hz, so you can really appreciate the fluidity and that feel that you get when you're just scrolling and swiping through the phone. Now, with the display, you're also getting curved edges. A lot of people don't like this, I think, in the tech world, but also I think a lot of people do, and I am one of the many people that do, because there's no I haven't had any problems in terms of functionality where I have accidental touches, and they have a really good software in terms of preventing accidental touches from the curved edges. But it is a little bit annoying with the keyboard because I feel like their software does overdo it a bit. So sometimes if I was typing something on a keyboard, it just wouldn't click a key on the very side because it would think it's an accidental touch. But other than that happened like once or twice. Other than that, it's all good, and it looks very nice. So in my book, it's only a Pro. But then on this display, if you look to the bottom of it, you have an in-display fingerprint. You could also use their facial recognition, though it's not as accurate as this fingerprint. And it's a good fingerprint. It's very, very fast, very, very responsive, as much as any in-display fingerprint is. But something that I noticed about this is it responds very, very well to wet fingers. So if your thumb is a little bit wet, you just wash your hands, whatever, you still got a bit of water in your thumbs. If you come and do the fingerprint, you know, chances are it's still gonna work. That's what happened with me, and that was really cool to see. I didn't expect it to work. I think it even worked better than Samsung in my experience, so that was kind of cool. And other than that, like I said, fast and responsive, but people have loved to point out that it is weirdly low down on the screen. Before this, I was using an S10 as my daily driver, and they have the fingerprint really low down on the screen as well, so I'm actually really used to this. I had no problem using it, and if you're not used to this, then you will get used to it, and once you do, it becomes, you know, very, very normal, effortless. I don't know why they didn't put it higher up though, but you know what, it doesn't even really matter. So then if we go all the way up to the top of the display, in that top left hand corner you will see a little hole punch, and you know, that's where the camera is, that's where the camera is stored. But I kind of wish that they still had a motorized camera like on the OnePlus 7 Pro. It just looks cooler. It's a talking point, right? Plus, it makes the phone look more futuristic since it's entirely screen, and also it's just cooler. And I don't know, I wish they kind of did that. This works. It's not like the punch was distracting or anything, and of course everybody's used to it at this point. It's much better than the notch, but it is what it is. I do kind of wish there was a motorized camera though. So now for the battery. The battery on this phone is average. It will more or less last until the end of the day. I'll, you know, open it at maybe around 10ish, and it will lose battery at around 11 p.m. So it's okay. It's very average. There's nothing really that impressive about it. In terms of screen time, I was getting. But then where they make up for this average battery is the charging. The charging is insanely fast. It is impressively fast. It is so fast. It is a trademark feature of this phone that I don't understand why other companies don't use this technology, because it gets your phone to 100% in 30 minutes, which is crazy because say you forgot to charge your phone overnight. If you say charge it during the 15 minutes that you're getting ready, that's over 50% charge. That will probably last you until the end of the day, depending on obviously your use, but still, that's really, really, really impressive. And of course they have the fast wireless charging, which is 100% in 43 minutes, though you're gonna have to buy their wireless charger, which is a little bit pricey. But the good news is their 65-watt charging adapter comes in the box, so you don't have to pay anything extra to get this 30 minutes of charging. And they call this feature Warp Charge 65, and the way it works is because there are two cells for the battery inside the phone that add up to the 4500 mAh battery that's totaled in there. Those two cells charge in parallel, and therefore they charge faster, and they still manage to keep a relatively big battery. Now, do I think it's worth sacrificing that bit of battery life for that really, really, really fast charging? I do. I 1000% do, and I think every company should prioritize this more than they have in the past, because OnePlus here, they're on another level. Now, I've said it before and I'll say it again in pretty much every OnePlus review that I've ever done, is that OnePlus phones are all about speed. It shows in the charging, it shows in the fluidity of the display with the 120Hz and that kind of stuff. But also it shows with the processor. It's powered by a 5nm chip, which is the Snapdragon 888, and it performs very, very well. It works very, very well with the software. Oxygen OS 11, which is the skin they're using with Android 11, also works very, very well with the processor, and it makes the experience just feel very snappy, very, very fluid. And overall, it's my favorite Android skin. It has a lot of customization, and there's just so much about it. But In terms of speed and capability and power, this phone has it all. But I did have one concern this one time when I was sat in the sun. It wasn't even that hot. It was hot, but it wasn't that hot. And the phone overheated. And basically I got a bunch of errors when I was trying to use certain features of the phone. For example, the camera, whenever I tried to open that, it would tell me that the phone was too hot and it needed to cool down. And basically the phone was very, very limited in terms of its use during that period where it was overheated because the phone was trying to cool down and it wasn't allowing you to use certain features, which was concerning because it wasn't that hot and it shouldn't have overheated. I don't know that, this was a one-time thing. It happened once, but it was one of the few times where it was put in the sun. So whether you should be concerned about that, in my case, this is what happened. I recommend checking with other reviewers who would have more experience with having the phone in heat and seeing how the phone did with that. Now, a big thing with phones recently anyway are the cameras, and that's a big part of what you're paying for when you get this phone. OnePlus spent a lot of money on this camera, and they advertised their Hasselblad collaboration like hell, like it was everywhere. So yeah, Hasselblad is a camera company, and they have collaborated with OnePlus in their camera system. I think it's like a 3-year contract or something. But anyway, this is the first of that collaboration. And you're getting, with these new cameras, a 48 megapixel main sensor, a 50 megapixel ultra-wide sensor with dual pixel autofocus. So that's very interesting there, that they're very similar. It's actually more megapixels than the main sensor. So they're trying to upscale the quality of the ultra-wide. And then they have an 8 megapixel 3.3 times optical zoom camera. And then they have a 2 megapixel depth sensor to help separate subjects from the background and that kind of thing. Now, before getting into the cameras themselves, just looking from the software side of things on the front, first off I want to say the viewfinder, the image and the video that you get in the viewfinder, depending on the camera, with the ultra-wide especially though, it doesn't look anywhere near as good as the final processed image. And I don't know why that is. Like, it can look really, really bad. You take the picture, then you look at the picture, and it ends up looking much better than it did in the viewfinder. Just a weird thing about the experience, like a lack of accuracy there. A pro though is the camera settings are very, very easy to change, and they're very, very accessible. In the top right, you just click those 3 dots, and then you can change the frame rate, you can change the resolution, and it's very, very quick, and it's a very nice way of handling that sort of thing. So I really like the way they did that. And then just a nice kind of little features, they have a new shutter button. It's like an orange button. It's a bit of incorporation from the Hasselblad company, so it's a bit of a signature move there. And you're getting a different sound as well when you press it, which is kind of satisfying. It's nice to see that. I personally have always loved these sort of signature moves like this. But then for the cameras themselves, having already listed the specs, first thing that I noticed was the ultra-wide is a much larger sensor. It's supposedly equal to the main sensor in terms of quality, which is really interesting. And what OnePlus also said is that it has an edge distortion of 1% in comparison to an edge distortion of about 10% that you'll find with other brands. So, I don't know, that's what OnePlus said, take that for what you will, but the ultra-wide is looking very, very good as a camera, and it also, because of the dual pixel autofocus, allows you to take macro shots with the ultra-wide, so you can get in very, very close and capture macro detail, which is nice. But then in terms of the video, first thing I noticed was the stabilization is very, very nice, very, very nice. And then OnePlus also are giving you 8K videos this year, just like Samsung, and I gotta be honest here, they win in comparison to Samsung. The 8K looks way, way better. It's not as cropped. You can use both the ultra-wide and the main sensor for this 8K video, so you can get multiple angles. And the stabilization is really good, and it's not cropped. It looks much, much better than Samsung. I don't know what they're doing differently. But then the most impressive thing to me, and this was an improvement in 4K, was the ability to record 4K at 120 frames per second. It looks very, very nice, and I haven't seen it on another phone before. And this is just a great feature. It's all around a great feature. Nothing is better than a high frame rate, and if it's at a high resolution, then you're winning in all angles and all aspects. So it looks very good. It looks very professional with the large sensor as well, because you get a lot of bokeh, a lot of background blur. But the problem when it comes to video is that 3.3 times optical zoom. It looks so bad. It looks hideous. I'm pretty sure they're using a digital zoom here. I don't think they're using the optical, but it's unusable. It's an embarrassment, to be honest. When it comes to the photos Photos are pretty good. They're pretty good. The zoom is sometimes can do absolutely terribly, sometimes can do well. It's very hit or miss kind of thing. And the ultra wide is pretty nice. But what I noticed is there's a big difference with the color in the main and ultra wide cameras. So it looks really weird when you're swapping between them. It's like they were taken in two completely different lights. But overall, to sum up this phone, I do think it's worth it. And I'll tell you why. Financially, in terms of the price of the phone, it does enter the flagship region, but it sits right at the bottom of that flagship region at £830. So then the question is it a low-end flagship? If it is a low-end flagship, then it's very fairly priced at what it is, but what makes it more valuable, what makes it worth it, is in terms of the quality of the product. Is it a high-end flagship? Is it a low-end flagship? Is it even worth being called a flagship? And in my opinion, it's definitely a high-end flagship. So you're getting this high-end flagship in terms of quality of the product for the price of a low-end flagship, and for that reason it's worth it. The reason I say it's a high-end flagship is because in terms of build quality and design, it hits all the right spots. In terms of specs, you're getting the latest processor from Snapdragon. You're getting a 120Hz display, 1440p. That's more than what even Apple does. You're getting some of the newest camera technologies in smartphones. And then you're getting their signature feature of incredibly fast charging. It's an okay battery, nothing special about the battery, definitely not a high-end flagship battery, but what they have is this charging that nobody else has, and in my opinion is even more better than a really good battery. Well, actually, you know what? That's up for discussion, but it is a really good feature that I definitely don't take for granted, and is definitely something you should think about when deciding whether or not you should buy this phone. So, that's my opinion about this phone. Take that for what you will, use it to your own knowledge, maybe compare it against other phones, whatever it is that you want to do to try and help yourself make the decision on whether you should buy this phone or not. But yeah, that's about it. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and give this video a like and comment for the sake of the algorithm. Check out my Instagram at El-Naggar. We just hit 1,000 followers there, so thank you so much for that. If we can keep that up, maybe hit 2,000 as soon as possible, that would be pretty nice. Anyway, I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. I appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next one. Salam.
Sometimes find yourself knowing